He always wants to act like he's such a victim or that everybody's so mean to him or whatever. And he has this shy, pretty wife now, and she's really shy.
The only wife or the only pretty wife? Like, is he slamming all of us?
Yeah, I think so. And then none of us were shy. So I guess that's his type. Submissive, shy, and pretty. Whatever. Okay, sorry, side note. I just had to have an ex-wives club for just a moment.
Hi, everyone. Let's talk about a phrase that has become Kody Brown's favorite new label. A phrase that reveals more about the collapse of his family than any angry confrontation ever could. Shy and pretty. Ever since his other wives left, this is how he constantly describes Robyn. My shy, pretty wife. On the surface, it sounds like a simple compliment. But when you hear it repeated, in contrast to the women who dared to disagree with him, it starts to sound less like praise and more like a weapon. It's a benchmark. It implies that if you are not shy, if you have a voice and an opinion, you are somehow less valuable, less good for him. And I think we all know what he really means. When Kody says shy, he means submissive, quiet, compliant, someone who doesn't push back. And by calling her pretty, he's not just complimenting Robyn. He's taking a deliberate, cruel jab at the women he's no longer with. It's a way of saying, you are not this. You failed to be this for me. It's a horrible thing to do, to pit women against each other like that, especially women he shared a life and children with. This whole dynamic was bubbling under the surface during the recent saga of Coyote Pass. While Meri and Janelle were practically beating their heads against a wall trying to get the property deal finalized, with Janelle often stuck in the middle, relaying messages between a confused Meri and a completely unwilling Kody, a new, nasty narrative was being spun. Out of nowhere, Kody started claiming that Janelle was trying to orchestrate some backdoor deal, that she wanted to sell the property out from under Meri. This accusation appeared like a ghost, right before the property finally sold. And here's the weird part. If you watch everything that happened on camera, no one ever mentioned an NDA or a secret deal until the absolute final hour. It was a storyline that seemed to emerge from the shadows, not from the actual conversations we saw. But it was during one of these frustrating, circular conversations about the land that Meri and Janelle found themselves talking about the real issue that was blocking everything, the shy, pretty wife. They were trying to untangle a business mess, but the ghost in the room was always Robyn, and the special, submissive dynamic she had with Kody. This private conversation between the two ex-wives has now blown up into the central question of the recent tell-alls. Is Robyn truly submissive? And this isn't some new gossip. Janelle has said she spotted this pattern the moment Robyn joined the family. She noticed how Robyn would layer praise on Kody, dripping it over him like syrup. He's such an amazing man, a great patriarch, a great leader. I speak Kody. Think about the timing. Robyn came into a brand new relationship with a man whose other wives were decades deep into the grind of marriage and family. They were tired. They weren't constantly stroking his ego anymore. They were dealing with bills and kids in real life. He was craving that new relationship energy, that adoration. Robyn provided a fresh supply. I believe she learned very quickly that with Kody, the fastest route to getting what she wanted was to play the damsel in distress, to lean into that submissive role, to let him feel like the rescuer, the protector, the ultimate decision-maker. It's a powerful form of flattery. She would bow, figuratively, and through her words, lavishing him with praise, building him up as this godly, infallible leader. And she has never stopped. To this day, she is his chief cheerleader. So when Meri and Janelle were asked point-blank in the tell-all about this, their answer was clear and united. Do you feel like Robyn is submissive? The answer was an immediate, I do. Janelle elaborated, saying, I feel like that works for Kody. That's what he wants. Follow the rules. Do what I say. Don't get out of line. He wants somebody who's just going to kowtow to him. Let's break down that word, kowtow. It means to bend the knee, to kneel before authority, to submit and offer excessive praise. In this context, it's Robyn's constant verbal and emotional prostration before Kody, reinforcing his belief that he is the ultimate authority. This isn't a minor observation. It's the diagnosis of a core disease that killed this family. Now, I know some people push back on this. They say, Robyn doesn't seem submissive. She seems to get her way all the time. And that's exactly the point. Submission, in this context, isn't about weakness. It can be a highly effective strategy. It's differential submission. She submits to his need for control, and in return, she gains influence, protection, and resources. It's a transaction. And to understand how deep this performance of submission goes, we have to look back at some of the most iconic and frankly uncomfortable moments from the early days. The most glaring example is the infamous purity speech. Remember this? Robyn, before marrying Kody, presented him with a grotesque gift, a framed photo of herself, and then launched into a tearful monologue about how she had given her purity to another man. Someone else. He kind of stole it from me. And this was supposed to be yours, but I gave it to someone else. And I'm so sorry. Let's be brutally honest. This was not a moment of genuine vulnerability between two adults about past relationships. This was a calculated, theatrical display of submission and obedience. It was a ritualistic act meant to show Kody, I acknowledge that my value is tied to my purity for you, and I am remorseful for having had a life before you. It was about positioning him as the forgiver, the savior, the ultimate authority over her very body and past. It was, in my opinion, one of the most disturbing public displays of cowtowing I've ever seen on reality TV, and it set the tone for their entire relationship. Then there are the countless smaller moments that built this dynamic. The way she constantly speaks for him. The way she frames her actions as being for Kody. When he cried over her changing her name to Robyn Alice Brown, she cooed, "Oh, you're so cute." She told the world, he may come across as high maintenance, but he's worth it. When another wife gave Kody a practical gift he didn't like, Robyn was the one to say, I knew it wasn't going to be that fun for him. She positioned herself as the one who truly knows him, who understands his nuanced needs better than anyone else. In conflicts, she would rarely, if ever, criticize him directly. Instead, she would prop him up. Kody does have final say, she'd state, even as he tried to deny it. We give him final say. He doesn't take final say. Do you see the cleverness in that? She grants him the power he craves publicly, making her both his supporter and the interpreter of his will. This behavior created a toxic feedback loop. Kody's ego, hungry for validation after years of being challenged by independent women like Christine and Janelle, was being fed a constant diet of praise. Robyn became his mirror, reflecting back an image of a flawless leader. And the more the other wives understandably refused to participate in this charade, because they were dealing with the real-world consequences of his decisions, the more he viewed them as disloyal, brutal, and problematic. He began to see their normal, adult disagreements as personal attacks, while Robyn's silence or defense of him was seen as loyalty. This is how submission becomes a weapon. It isolates the person being praised from any form of accountability. If everyone around you is either a critic or a sycophant, you will always retreat to the sycophant. This brings us directly to the apology tour and the concept of nuance that Kody loves to bring up. He has said Robyn is very good at reading nuance. What does that mean? It means she is adept at interpreting his moods, his unspoken desires, and aligning herself perfectly with them. During his non-apology tours, he didn't want a dialogue. He didn't want pushback. He wanted the women to sit, listen, and absorb his version of events. Meri and Janelle tried to engage, to hold him accountable, and he recoiled. Robyn, however, read the nuance. She saw that what he wanted was not to be challenged, but to be seen as apologetic. So after one session, she said, I'm so glad he took accountability. But he hadn't. He just talked about accountability. She validated his performance, not the substance. This is the core of their dynamic. She validates his feelings of being right, rather than challenging his actions which are wrong. So, we have this established pattern. But then, how does this play out in the day-to-day disintegration of the family? It manifests in accusations of girl games. This is Kody's favorite term to dismiss Meri and Janelle's very valid frustrations. When they had that private conversation about him calling Robyn his shy, pretty wife, that conversation wasn't even about Robyn at its heart. It was about Kody. It was about how he was weaponizing his relationship with Robyn to demean and hurt them. By putting Robyn on a pedestal with those specific words, he was implicitly knocking them off theirs. But when Robyn inevitably heard about this, because information in a polygamist family always travels, she took it personally. She felt attacked. And Kody, true to his role, absorbed her hurt and translated it back as an attack from Meri and Janelle. He told them they were playing girl games. He accused them of being petty, of being mean girls. Do you see the mechanism? 1. Kody makes a hurtful comparison. 2. The ex-wives react to the hurt. 3. Robyn's feelings are hurt by their reaction. 4. Kody attacks the ex-wives for hurting Robyn's feelings, completely sidestepping his own initial role. The submissive wife sensitivity becomes the dominant husband's justification for wrath. Janelle called this out brilliantly in the tell-all. When asked about these girl games, she turned it right back on Kody. Maybe he's playing girl games, too. He's definitely called me lots of things in this negotiation. So, is that a girl game if he calls me names or he makes fun of me? She exposed the absurdity of the label. Having an opinion is not a game. Calling out a dynamic is not petty. And here's the crucial point that gets lost. Calling someone submissive is not an insult. It's a descriptor. It is a factual observation of a power dynamic. Kody himself has praised Robyn's loyalty for years, and in his dictionary, loyalty is synonymous with obedience. The real insult was Kody's original act, telling the world that his new, shy, pretty wife was what he wanted, while the mothers of his children, the women who built his life with him, were what? Not shy, not pretty, brutal. He started the fire by elevating one at the explicit expense of the others. Any reaction from Meri and Janelle was simply them feeling the heat. To pathologize their natural human reaction as games is a classic tactic to avoid responsibility. This all stems from a fundamental mismatch of expectations. Kody, as he's gotten older, seems to want a perpetual honeymoon phase. He wants the adrenaline of new love, the constant admiration, the lack of conflict. That's a fantasy. In any long-term relationship, especially after 20 or 30 years, you move out of that phase. You build a partnership. You disagree. You navigate conflict. The other wives evolved into that stage. They saw Kody as a partner, sometimes a failing one. Robyn, by maintaining the honeymoon behaviors, the constant praise, the performative submission, the damsel act, gave him a way to stay in that fantasy. She became his escape from the complicated reality he had created. And let's be clear, this is a transaction. Robyn submits, and in return, she is spoiled rotten, as Janelle put it. She gets the big house, the long vacations, the unwavering financial and emotional support. She gets to be the last wife standing, the one who won. But what did she really win? She won a man whose entire identity is now wrapped up in being the patriarch of a crumbled kingdom. She won the sole responsibility of feeding an ego that now has no other sources of supply. She is the only one left to validate him. That is not a position of power, it's a gilded cage of her own making. Her submission secured her spot as a sole beneficiary, but it also made her the sole caretaker of a very fragile and often angry man. This leads us to the heart of the moral and physical reality that the other wives finally woke up to. Janelle and Meri calling out the submission isn't just about gossip. It's about acknowledging the cost of that transaction. The cost was their dignity, their self-respect, and frankly, their physical well-being. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, the gross, unglamorous reality of the plural marriage that the show often glossed over. These women didn't just share a husband emotionally, they shared him physically, intimately. Kody would go from house to house, from bed to bed. They all, as Janelle once bluntly put it in a different context, shared the same pencil. This isn't just a metaphor for emotional strain. It's a biological reality. In polygamous structures, where one man is sexually active with multiple women, there are very real health consequences for the women. Yeast infections, bacterial vaginosis, the spread of STIs, these are common, documented issues. The pH balance of one woman can be disrupted by the introduction of the same fluid that was just with another woman. It's a cycle that can cause chronic discomfort and health problems. When you step back and think about it, what self-respecting woman in the 21st century signs up for that? To willingly enter a situation where your health is routinely compromised, where you are one of several sexual outlets for a man, and where you are expected to be grateful for it. For years, the Browns framed this as a spiritual calling, a beautiful sacrifice. But as the veil fell, the other wives began to describe it differently, as settling, as accepting less than they deserved. Meri, Janelle, and especially Christine, reached a point where they said, "I am worth more than this. My body is worth more than this. My peace is worth more than this. And where was Robyn in this awakening? She was actively encouraging the opposite. She was the one, even recently, talking about wanting to live the principle about Kody maybe courting again. She is still submitting to the idea of polygamy, to the system that requires this physical and emotional sharing. Why? Because within the broken system, her strategy of submission worked. She became the favorite. The other wives leaving didn't ruin her plan, it completed it. She now has the man, the resources, and the title without the hassle of the sister wives she never really bonded with. But this is the final, tragic proof of her submission. A truly independent, self-respecting woman who saw her sister wives fleeing a situation that made them feel devalued and unhealthy would not be lobbying to bring more women into it. She would be questioning the system itself. Robyn's desire to maintain the polygamist structure, even in its hollowed-out form, shows that her identity is completely fused with it. She needs to be the good polygamist wife. She needs the structure that validates her chosen role as the submissive, praising, loyal one. Without the principle of plural marriage, her entire persona, the special wife who does it right, has no meaning. This is why Janelle and Meri's comments hit such a nerve. They aren't just calling Robyn submissive. They are pointing out that her brand of submission was the glue that held a broken system together just long enough for it to benefit her, and it was the acid that dissolved their bonds with Kody. By never challenging him, by always reflecting back his greatness, she made it impossible for the other wives to have a real, flawed, human relationship with him. Every time they tried to address a problem, they were now competing with a fantasy version of a wife who had no problems, only praise. Kody, addicted to that fantasy, began to view any problem presented by the other wives as a personal betrayal. Why couldn't they be more like Robyn? Why were they so difficult? The family didn't just drift apart. It was actively split along a new fault line Kody created. The line between those who fed his ego without question and those who asked him to be a responsible partner and father. Robyn, through her submission, drew that line. And Kody, loving the reflection she gave him, stepped over to her side and burned the bridges behind him. Let's tie this back to the money, because in the Brown family, love, power, and finances are a tangled knot. The Coyote Pass debacle is a perfect case study of how Robyn's submission distorted reality and hurt the others financially. Here were Meri and Janelle trying to do the practical, adult thing, untangle their shared assets so everyone could move on. They were communicating, however messily, trying to find a solution. But Kody was not operating in the realm of practicality. He was operating in the realm of perceived loyalty and punishment. His accusations that Janelle was trying to pull a backdoor deal didn't come from any documented evidence. They came from a place of deep suspicion, likely fed by private conversations with Robyn. Remember Kody's claim that Robyn is good at reading nuance. What is the nuance she was reading between Janelle and Meri's pragmatic discussions about land division? She likely read it as a threat, as collusion against Kody's interests, which are now her interests. She may have expressed worry, or hurt, or suspicion to Kody in private. And for Kody, Robyn's worry is a command. If his loyal, submissive wife feels threatened by the other wife's actions, then those actions must be hostile. So, he transmuted a basic financial negotiation into a narrative of betrayal. He accused Janelle of sinister motives, poisoning the well, and making a simple transaction fraught with emotional peril. This is the real-world cost. This dynamic stalled their financial freedom, caused immense stress, and likely cost them money. It also perfectly illustrates the difference between how the ex-wives and Robyn communicate with Kody. Meri and Janelle were talking about facts, lots, liens, buyouts. Robyn speaks to Kody about feelings, her unease, her perception of disloyalty, her need for security. In Kody's world, where he is the ultimate authority, feelings trump facts. Robyn's feelings become his facts. Her submission, presenting her anxieties for him to solve, grants her enormous indirect power. She doesn't have to demand, she just has to be subtly distressed, and her knight will slay the dragon, even if the dragon is just Janelle with a spreadsheet. This is why the ex-wives could never win. They were playing a completely different game. They were playing checkers, the game of logistics, fairness, and co-parenting. Robyn, whether consciously or not, was playing chess, the game of emotional influence and positional power within Kody's psyche. And the board, the rules, and the referee were all Kody. Now, sitting in her large, quiet house with her husband who has no other wives to manage, what does Robyn's victory look like? She has a man who is publicly bitter, who has alienated most of his children, whose finances are a publicly messy spectacle, and whose entire identity is in crisis. She is the sole audience for his grievances, the sole target of his now undivided and likely overwhelming need for validation. The other wives carried that burden collectively for decades. Now it rests on her shoulders alone. Her submission bought her the prize, but the prize is a full-time job as the keeper of a fragile ego with no sister wives to share the emotional labor. This is the ultimate irony. Meri, Janelle, and Christine are free. They are building new lives, finding new love, rediscovering themselves outside of the Kody Brown entity. Their punishment for being disloyal and not submissive is peace, independence, self-respect. Robyn's reward for her loyalty and submission is a gilded, lonely isolation with a man who requires constant maintenance. She is living the consequence of her own strategy. When Janelle and Meri finally said aloud, "Robyn is submissive, and that's what Kody wants," they weren't just stating a fact. They were issuing a verdict. They were declaring that they understand the game that was played, and they are choosing not to play anymore. They are defining their exit not as a loss, but as a rejection of a rigged system. They are saying, "You can have the man who needs that. We want no part of it." In doing so, they have reclaimed all the power. They reframed the entire story. They are not the spurned wives, they are the escapees. And Robyn, the winning wife, is left holding the key to an empty castle. In the end, this isn't really about Robyn versus Meri and Janelle. It's about two fundamentally incompatible visions of marriage. One vision is hierarchical, based on male authority and female compliance. The other vision, which the leaving wives evolved toward, is based on partnership, mutual respect, and shared agency, even if it's messy. Kody and Robyn are locked in the first vision. It's the only language they speak to each other. He needs to lead, she needs to follow. He needs praise, she needs to provide it. It's a closed loop. The problem was, you can't force a square peg into a round hole forever. You can't demand that three independent, strong-willed women who helped you build a life from the ground down suddenly become shy and pretty and stop having needs or opinions. The cognitive dissonance for Kody became too great. Instead of changing his expectations, he simply demonized the women who couldn't meet them and sanctified the one who could. So, was Robyn's submission an act? A manipulation? From my perspective, that's almost irrelevant. The outcome was the same. Her behavior, whether born of genuine belief or strategic calculation, created an environment where Kody's worst impulses were not just tolerated but rewarded. It made him a monster, as your original title said, by giving his monster exactly what it wanted to eat: unquestioning allegiance. The other wives, by refusing to feed that beast, starved it. They forced a crisis, and in that crisis, Kody made his choice. He chose the wife who made him feel like a king in a crumbling kingdom over the wives who asked him to help fix the foundations. The final, powerful point is this: by naming the dynamic, by calling it submission and cowtowing, Meri and Janelle have taken the sting out of Kody's accusations. He wants to call it loyalty. They call it what it is: a power transaction. He wants to call their frustration girl games. They call it what it is: a natural reaction to unfair treatment. In reclaiming the language, they have reclaimed their narrative. They are no longer characters in Kody and Robyn's story of favoritism and rejection. They are the authors of their own stories of liberation. And that is the most powerful, non-submissive thing a person can do. But what do you think? I've laid out my analysis, but I want to hear from you. Do you believe Robyn's submission was genuine or a calculated strategy? Do you think Kody would have changed if even Robyn had pushed back on him years ago? And most importantly, who do you think is truly happier and freer now? The wives who left or the wife who stayed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this deep dive into the Brown family dynamics resonated with you, or if you have a different perspective, I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you found it insightful. It really helps the channel. And subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss our next analysis. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.